if we want to pursue God. We need to welcome grace instead.
Hey, it's Bishop Reed right here in the living room. Please join us for This Is the Day on Friday, because we're going to be talking with our good friend Greg Willits, founder of Rosary Army. It's going to be a great time catching up with Greg, so plan on joining us right here in the living room for This Is the Day on Friday, right here on Catholic TV.
From the Cathedral Basilica of the Assumption in Covington, Kentucky to your home, we are America's Catholic Television Network.
The following presentation of the Mass is made
educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams, Saints, LSU, Tulane Pelicans. To break it down, two of the best we have. Two of my colleagues at the brand new 106.7 The Ticket. Ken Trahan, our sports director, Jude Young, both of CrestCitySports.com as well. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming down today. We'll start with Ken. Ken, we got some great news out there for the sports fan in New Orleans. Tell them a little bit about our flip to a 100,000-watt flamethrower.
Well, it's been in the works for quite some time, Eric, and it's great to be here. Thanks for having us. From the standpoint of what we've been doing in radio, we moved our product, to Cumulus Radio in 2019 with the idea that we'd have more exposure, a better signal, more support from a corporate entity as compared to a local, with all due respect, and the idea that we could expand some things. And from day one, that was a discussion when I was brought on board, and part of what encouraged me to make the move. So we made the move in 2019. COVID hit because already we had been discussing the possibility of doing sports on a more regular basis, if not all the time. Well, ultimately, as you know, a year ago, we went all sports. It took longer than we wanted to, but it did, and the station has done very well economically, and the listenership is a loyal listenership. In the meantime, because of the fact that it had done as well as it had, the thought process was broached to possibly move to one of our bigger signals, which we have now done. It's a real easy trip, by the way.
It is.
106.1 is 106.7, so just go a couple of decibels down the dial and lock it in at 106.7. So look, we got 100,000 watts. We've got a signal that hits the entire metro area clean as a whistle, hits the North Shore beautifully, goes west to Baton Rouge, goes east to Biloxi, and again, you can't ask for anything more than that. You got a huge circle now, which hits the map that you want to hit. And of course, you can always listen online and get the app, and it's easy to do. So, look, we're excited about it. It was great to bring you on board initially. Great to bring my comrade with me. He's been my sidekick here for 20 some odd years, whatever I've done, right? So just drag him along for the ride. And it's been a good ride. So we're really happy about this. And 5 hours consecutive local programming now from 2 to 7. Games, of course, we have Tulane, UNO, high school games, and there's more to come, and others that want to be with us right now. And they want to be with us because they know what we're doing, and they understand that we have something that's going to be feasible for them, and it's going to have a carryover in terms of audience. So it's good. We're really looking forward to it, but you got to make the switch.
That's right.
1067.
There you go.
7. Lucky 7.
Jude, tell them about, again, the expansion of the lineup now, and of course, a place, one of the things I talked about yesterday was, it is a place now where, again, high school games can be heard on the radio, where, again, Tulane and UNO have a place where, again, their teams can be heard on the radio as well. But again, there's also an expansion of our local shows as well.
Exactly. Well, we'll get into that part first, which is we're going to have Ken Trahan on from 2 to 4 weekdays now, leading into your show from 4 to 6, and then I'll take over the 6 o'clock hour. Although on Tuesday nights we have Tiger Rag Radio, a couple hours of very focused LSU talk. So I think that gives us the ability to put out a block every weekday along with the live games that we have. So many high school games. We've added Delgado baseball thanks to Ken to the lineup in the past year, so we'll hear some of them down the stretch perhaps this season. And obviously being the home of both UNO and the major sports for Tulane, I mean, we are one of those areas where we've got it covered for you locally in sports, and you should have us locked in on your dial, one of your favorites, and come to us every day. And having that block in the afternoon so that people are ready for their sports evening and sports weekend, I think is huge. I know that was very important to Ken to be able to do that, and that's why he targeted that 2 to 4 o'clock block, and I'm happy to help people sort of wrap up their sports day when I'm on the air, or lead into one of our many live games that we're going to have throughout the year. I think what people need to understand, which is so important about this, is basically regular TV, traditional television, cable is falling by the wayside slowly but surely, and that's affected radio in a big way too, because you can stream whatever you like on your phone, a device in your car, and something that is sort of bulletproof when it comes to that is sports. Local focused sports for the radio, just like live sports, whether you're talking about radio or TV, that's bulletproof. That's different, and we give you live perspective, unlike a podcast, of what's going on during the day as it happens, and react to that so you can be on the ball. You've been doing it for a long time. Now we add a full 3 hours more to that. I think it's special, and Pat Galloway running the station and having that vision and believing in Ken and our thoughts on what we can do and believing in you, I think the synergy is fantastic.
I would agree. Ken, also again, the Fox Sports Radio, again having been the affiliate there, but also again the longest running sports radio show in the city, the Three Tailgaters. Talk about that as well on Saturdays.
Well, it's been a blessing. We had the opportunity to create it back in 1995 at the beginning of that year, and where I was at the time, and I don't mind mentioning Johnny Andrews and Bob Christopher, who were very important in my career, and terrific men and professionals on another signal. And it's carried over everywhere we've been. It was Three Tailgaters, myself and Ed Daniels and Archie Manning for 15 years. And then when Archie had to beg off with all of his time constraints, we added Rick Gailey. And Rick was fantastic. Miss him to this day. And then, of course, we lost Rick, and Ed continued on with me, and we decided at that point we don't need a third person. The third tailgater is the fans. And now with Ed gone, a natural progression was to get a guy that worked with him at 2 different places, actually 3, and a guy that has worked with me on and off in radio for years, and all 3 of us met when we were freshmen at Loyola and became closest of friends, and that's Ro Brown. So, and his wife, Ed's wife, Robin, was absolutely and 100% on board with that. She loved the idea. So here we are. We're still doing it, and we'll always do it in his honor, much like his television show is always going to be in his honor, which he created. So it's been great, and we're doing a lot of other things for him too.
Yeah. We're going to talk about a scholarship that's coming up in a moment. The relationship between Crescent City Sports and also, again, 1067.
Well, it's hard to deny that it's intertwined completely, because Ken and I do own Crescent City Sports, and we bring in a lot of the talent that we're fortunate enough to have support us and provide content on the airwaves as well. There's crossover when we do some simulcasts with live games on the high school level, as well as having the video married to our website. So just the ability to cross promote on both sides, I think, is very important. And we've got local locals who are tied to this community, who've made decisions over the years to stay here for the long haul and work in sports media, that are dedicated to doing their part to making it all work, both with our website and with now 106.7 The Ticket. And I hope people understand that we do need your local support as a result. Where even though we have the support of Cumulus New Orleans, the big Cumulus supporting what we do with the radio station, this is going to require local support. Fans have talked for years, why don't we have a local sports station with a good signal that ever makes it? Well, part of it is that you have to advertise with us, and we can grow and get the word out and build something over the years, because New Orleans is too big of a sports market, although not a huge overall market. We have 2 major league teams, we have very thriving college athletics, we have passion for high school. It's up to the fan to be able to say, hey, I want to support that, I want to be involved. You've had that over the years, or what you've been able to build over decades wouldn't have worked, and certainly I've seen it from Ken for many years as well. So we need the community so that we can provide for the community.
Ken, what can you add to that?
Well, we strategically planned to make it a 5-hour continuation of local sports. We felt like the initial conversation was to have me on in the morning, and my feeling was Dan Patrick gets the best ratings of anything we have. He's popular, he's entertaining, they have fun with it, but they have good guests and they're serious too. Colin Cowherd follows him, and we felt like the one area that we could absolutely make a dent and really establish something and have it in the market was to do something at 2 o'clock, because there's no other local sports on radio at that time of day, none whatsoever. The closest thing to it would be 4 o'clock elsewhere. Therefore, you jump the shark, so to speak, and you have the continuation, which gives you the opportunity to create a carryover audience. I want the people that listen to what I do from 2 to 4 to listen to you.
Yeah, of course.
And
Same
you
thing.
want them to listen to Jude. So there's a continuation. It made a lot of sense from a programming perspective, because we felt like the Fox programming in the morning was good. And if you're talking about listening times, the 3 times that draw the most would be morning drive, afternoon drive, and really anywhere from 2 to 7. So that's kind of the thought process, because at 7 we're back to network, or we're carrying games, as Jude mentioned. So we thought it was smart. We thought it would be effective. We'll see how that works out. But as Jude mentioned, we need the support of everybody. We've had good support, and I have a lot of people that support what I do, just as you do, and that's extremely important to make this happen. We're advertising based, so you can get on board. Should mention too, look, Cumulus Radio has 4 stations locally, and we hit 4 different formats, so you have an opportunity to get on board. And we want to tell our friends that we're on 106.7, that have flipped to 106.1. That's where you can now find Heaven Radio and gospel music. So we hope that you find that out. I know people were a little bit shocked when they first tuned in and heard sports on 106.7 and heard gospel on 106.1.
That's right.
But we're promoting both and making sure people know, because they have to know. And we'll push it out on social media too. But to accentuate Jude's point about Crescent City Sports, we married, and I've had that philosophy from day one, to marry entities together, because you become a stronger entity in the process. And that website is a baby. You know, I helped create it, and we're in a position now where we've done extremely well in the market, and we have some really good people. We lost Ed, and that was a massive loss, because he had great stories and attracted people. But we've added some good people, and I encourage people to check him out. Grant Shastry does a great job across the board. And we got 2 young guys. We love to help young people. And Blake Care's a high school student at that, and he's got a chance to be very good. And Jacob Senat, a really good kid. So, look, you want us to help you, give us a chance, we'll give you a chance.
There you go. One more thing before we get to content here. Something very near and dear to your heart, a scholarship in the name of Ed Daniels. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, he's my best friend, and you know, we met at Rummel back in the day. We're not young anymore. And we hit it off right away, because we had the exact same interests. People kept telling him, there's a guy just like you. And people kept telling me the same thing. We weren't in the same class. It was a huge school. It had 1,380 students, and we were in different classes. Junior year, we ended up together. Said, you're the guy. I said, yeah, I'm the guy. And long story short, the 22nd version, we're bowling in Rummel Bowling League one day, and he came to talk to me, and he told me, he says, man, I just lost my dad. He's 47, died of a heart attack. And I'm an only child, and man, I don't know where to go. And I just told him, I said, I'll be your friend. And it was in a story I wrote for CrescentCitySports.com. But and we became best of friends, and promised each other we'd look out for each other and help each other along the way. And boy, I miss him terribly, personally and professionally, because we helped each other daily. Of course, we both went to Loyola, pursued the same thing, and got into the same business and did all this. But we're having this event on April the 11th, and it's invitation, but there's two different components here. That event is a 7 to 9:30 event. I have 6 restaurants, all the drinks you want, music from Blair on the air, and also a silent auction of sports memorabilia. And it's to raise money to endow a scholarship at Ed's alma mater at Archbishop Rummel. It takes $250,000. I believe anything that's of the Lord is going to occur, and I'm believing in it beyond the shadow of a doubt. So we've sent out invitations, but you can also give without coming, as some people already have, as we had a meeting this week that we found out that we've had several people contribute already. So, and it's on Crescent City Sports, but we'll push it out further on social media and promote it on radio. But again, this is something close to my heart, and anything lasting is what I wanted to do, and this would be lasting.
If someone wants to get involved, someone wants to give, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can go look at the website, Crescent City Sports. We have the story up. Just look on the website or Google Ed Daniels Crescent City Sports, or you can go to Archbishop Rummel's website where it has giving and scholarships, and the link is there for everybody to partake in. You know, there's some people that are going to contribute. A perfect example would be Omar Khan, who's a dear friend of mine and Ed's, the general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's a Rummel guy and a Tulane guy, and he's ascended to as high as you can get, and don't be surprised if he ascends higher in the NFL, hint, hint, down the road. But Omar can't come because it's 2 weeks before the draft, but he wants to contribute, and I know he will. And there's others like that too that can't come back to town. Willie Fritz is actually trying to clear his schedule. That's how much he cares about Ed. Ed Ogeron. Don't be surprised if you don't see him there. Same thing with LSU and Brian Kelly. Look, there's a lot of important people that are coming. So we're looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to having you there.
Right, there you go. We will mention it again at the end of the program for folks that want to give. Again, and what we'll do now is we will get ready. We'll take our break here. When we come back, we'll jump into Saints, LSU, Tulane, and Pelicans. Before we do, want to wish a happy first birthday to Luca Chacon Castro, again, son of Alex Chacon, who is directing our program today. I remember last year when he was born. Happy birthday, and of course, hope you enjoy the birthday with, again, friends and family. We'll take a break here. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Ken Trahan and Jude Young are our guests today. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Jude Young and Ken Trahan are our guests this evening. Guys, let's start with the New Orleans Saints, changing the coaching staff. It's our first opportunity as a group to speak about it. I'll take you first, Jude. Your thoughts on Kellen Moore, Staley, and the staff that's been put together?
Well, I think it's important to know that when you see these staffs built, you're going to have coaches go back into their background and work with people that they've been comfortable with and that they know, they understand their philosophy, they understand their day-to-day, and how they deal with people. And it starts with the importance of coordinators. Having Doug Nussmeier, who was with him in Philadelphia, made a lot of sense. And Nussmeier's local connections, as Ken and others have written on locally, it makes a lot of sense for him to come down and sort of be the support mechanism for a guy in Kellen Moore who's going to run his own offense. Having Brandon Staley on the other side, who knows what it's like to be a head coach and to be a support in that area, as well as has had success with different types of personnel defensively in his stops and been able to get the most out of them. I like that part, and I think that's my feeling on the big picture, that this is a Saints team clearly in transition, whether all the folks on Airline want to admit that or not. You're trying to find the way to get the most out of your players and giving the league a different look this year. This isn't going to be what you've seen from Sean Payton feeding into Dennis Allen on both sides of the ball. It's going to be different in a lot of ways, and there's going to be change change as far as the personnel who are going to be highlighted and how you're going to do so. So you have a staff here that can support that vision for Kellen Moore. I think you're going to see a team that's going to be very creative this year on both sides of the ball and not be so predictable, like perhaps particularly on the defensive side when things got sour. It got stale in part because the talent level reduced on that side. So there's a lot of changes coming, and I think fans are going to be excited to see how that plays out year one.
Ken?
I think it's a perfect fit because this guy, Kellen Moore, is really kind of in between Sean Payton and Dennis Allen in terms of his persona, how he approaches things. But what I like most is the fact that he's clearly one of those guys that does not adapt his personnel to his philosophy. He adopts his philosophy to his personnel. All you need to do is look at what he's done in Dallas, where they threw the ball on almost every down with Dak Prescott, and he led the NFL in passing yards. Then he went to the Chargers, and they were a mixture. They were a balanced team, run and pass. Then he goes to Philadelphia, and they're extremely run heavy to where their wide receiver reads books on the bench. So as a result, I think what that tells you is he's clearly playing to the strength of his personnel and not trying to fit the square peg into a round hole, and I think that's important. So I like that aspect. I like the fact that his coaching staff is younger. He's tapped into the college ranks. His coordinators, Doug Nussmeier's ready, and make no mistake about it, it's very similar to Sean Payton in that he's got an offensive coordinator, but Kellen Moore, is calling the plays. And as for Staley, he's been there, done that before, and he's been a head coach. So you get a head coach being a defensive coordinator. Well, you've got a price point already established for that. His name was Dennis Allen, who had been a head coach with the Raiders and was a very good defensive coordinator here. Just wasn't a very good head coach. So I like that. As I mentioned, I like the younger staff that they have. And more than anything, I like the fact that they have finally moved on. Sean Payton was incredible. I mean, he's still a friend of mine, and we communicate. And what he did here was fantastic. And anybody that takes shots at him is ridiculous. I mean, what the guy gave you was something that you could never have gotten otherwise. He was that good. That said, the further you get away from him and what he's done here, the better. You can't live off of that, and also you have to get rid of that large shadow. And it was still here because his defense coordinator was the head coach. Now, Dennis Allen made changes on his staff for a couple of straight years, but now it's virtually all different with that staff. So it's a new look, new set of eyes, new set of ears, a different perspective on what people can do and what they can't do, and I think you're going to see that reflected in their personnel decisions and who plays and who doesn't.
Right. Jude, again, in a very Mickey Loomis-like, creating cap space, about $19 million left to spend for the Saints, who were last in terms of cap space. What do you think? How do you think they've done in free agency, and what do you think they'll do with the remaining $19 million?
Well, I think they did what they could do in free agency because of this being hopefully the last year they're playing behind the 8 ball going to the offseason with a big issue with the salary cap. They seem to be set up so that's not the issue starting next offseason, and with more TV money coming in, expanding the cap beyond. I do want to touch on, and I've done that on my show, the point of you can quibble more with the personnel decisions, the drafts that have come from this front office and Mickey Loomis's philosophy, but I think it's unfair in some ways to say, oh, you're kicking the can down the road and saying that couldn't have been more successful. COVID threw such a wrench into those long-term plans in a league that the famous Jerry Glanville saying, not for long if you don't start winning. You're trying to win every year. Certainly the Saints have done that, maybe to their detriment in some ways here post Sean Payton, but the concept was actually sound in a lot of ways. But you don't expect the salary cap to go down. You're planning for it to always go up, and a black swan event that affected the whole world really threw that off. Even still, if they'd have drafted better, they would have been in the race every year like they were most years in this division. So it's not the most unsound philosophy when you think of what was expected versus something you couldn't possibly expect. That being said, it limited their ability to go out in the market again this year and be aggressive for high-price free agents, and you're not going to pay a Paulson Adebo coming off an injury $18 million. And for the most part, he may not fit into a defensive philosophy where we talk about Brandon Staley being versatile with what he's done with his personnel, but he likes to play more zone and half zone looks, and he wants defensive backs to be able to play more downhill and read the play in front of them, where Adebo's proven to be more of a guy that needs to be physical with receivers and more of a man cover guy, you would say, than maybe that kind of fit. That said, they might have still kept him and made it work because of his talent, but they couldn't go to that point in the market and build a roster. So it's still very much in transition. I'm much more concerned with what they do with this draft and can they find immediate contributors. You've got to find guys that fill roles, and most importantly, the biggest gap on this whole roster, other than maybe Alvin Kamara, I don't see stars on this roster. And if they are stars, they're aged stars at the end of their careers. This is a roster that is lacking impact players who make the difference between being competitive and being a contender.
Ken?
Well, it's all about the draft. I mean, you lived off the 2017 draft for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
You can do it in 1 year. If they can hit on the draft this year, they can win the division. I make that statement unequivocally. Now, what do I mean by hit? You got to hit big. Look at the 2017 draft and what it did for this team and infused a level of talent that hadn't been there. Let's not forget in 2016 what their record was, for that matter in 2015, right? So they weren't very good, and they had this draft, and it changed everything. So if you hit one draft, you can win and win quickly in this league, and they need that badly. And if you look at the first-round draft picks they've made since then, they failed. I mean, there's no other way to put it. You know, aside from Marcus Davenport and Peyton Turner, Cesar Ruiz is solid but nothing special, not like where he was drafted. Trevor Penning has gotten better, but he's not played to that level. You can say the same thing about Andrews Pete from years back. And then, of course, you look at the others that we're talking about that were in that position where they picked him in the first round. Who's been a real impact guy? Brian Brzez's a nice young player, but he's got to be better against the run. And so you can't really put him in that. And then how's he going to fit in if they play a 3-4 and you sign Gottschall? So, look, there's a lot of questions, but it all stems from what Jude mentioned, which is they haven't drafted well. And they haven't done that since 2017. They've had a couple of good picks in there, but typically not the first round guys. What does a first round guy have to be? It's got to be a guy that's a Pro Bowl player or an All-Pro or both. And that's what the first round means. And they haven't had that. I mean, Ryan Ramczyk was a great pick, last pick in the first round, but unfortunately his career's cut short, it appears. So other than that, if you look at the first round picks, you can't say that about anybody else that they've drafted.
All those first rounders, Brzez's the best one of the bunch as far as where he was picked, bottom of the first round, and the production you're getting out of him and the potential for more. Even the best overall player, Chris Olave, everybody sort of thought, are you trading up for a guy who's maybe a ceiling of a high-end number 2? And I think that's what we're seeing. I think we see a Saints team, we talk about lack of impact stars at their position. Wide receiver is one of them, and you moved up to 11 to be able to pick him. So yeah, that all adds up to being many years of, I don't want to say straight up failure in that area, but certainly underperforming versus what you need to stock the roster with young talent on rookie contracts. It needs to start now, or the Saints are going to continue to slide. They're not going to move up.
With that said, in terms of draft needs, where do you think they go?
Well, they have a lot of areas that I think they playmakers. One, obviously we've heard rumors of interest in Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, who could be special at that position. I worry about top half of the first round going tight end. You better be sure that he's a special talent, because we've seen teams make picks there and not gotten that production out of them. They need a number 1 receiver. They need size at the receiver position. You can't roll out there with guys like Olave and you have an undersized Rashid Shaheed. I think you need a big target there for your offense and to give a different look to defenses that you face. I still don't think they're completely done with the offensive line. Right now you have at least one below average starter if you had to play a game today at left guard, and maybe Trevor Penning. That thought process of maybe he can survive at right tackle. I'd like to see the coaching staff see if he can thrive at guard.
I do too.
That's something I'd like to see, but maybe the staff doesn't think that way. We know the past staff was really trying to make it work at tackle. But yeah, you have an open spot there to be sure as we sit here right now. And then you look on the flip side of the ball. You're going to play more of a 3-4 base. You need speed on the edge for a team that was built around the Dennis Allen philosophy for a decade, that wanted size on the edge more than guys who could bend the corner, who could win on that first step off the snap. If you're going to play more of those looks and have wide 9 pass rushers, Saints don't have that on their roster, so they need to address that right away in this draft.
Ken?
Well, I agree with pretty much everything he said. Cornerback certainly is a need. You know, they re-signed Yadam and brought him back, but you traded Lattimore. You let Adebo walk, so what do you have? You've got a second-year player from Alabama, Kool-Aid McKinstry. You've got a guy in Alontae Taylor who you like, who's pretty good. And what else do you really have that you think you can put out there? If you can't cover people, you can't do the things you want to do up front. So you'd love to blitz as much as you possibly can, and if you don't have coverage guys, you can't do that. I do like the signings that they made. I think Justin Reed's an upgrade over Will Harris, and I think Gottschall certainly is exactly what they need. They were not good against a run. It's that simple.
Right.
And whether they play a 3-4 or 4-3, you signed a 330-pound guy that's a space eater and can play the run.
Right.
So I like that. They have needs everywhere, though. I agree with you. Linebacker, if they're going to go to 3-4, who are your 4 linebackers? You wouldn't mind having Zach Bond or Caden Ellis around, but you got to find guys that can play there. Running back, after Alvin Kamara, who do you have? And wide receiver, Chris Olave's a nice player, but he's not a star. And tight end, they re-signed Juwan Johnson. He's a solid guy, probably in the middle, average-wise in terms of the NFL at his position. Other than that, you got Foster Moreau, and he's an inline tight end that's there to block and catch a short pass occasionally. So, again, they need help everywhere. And that's why I think 2 things come to mind with the draft. 1, pick the best player available if you stick at 9. 2, trade down for a change and get a couple extra picks.
Right.
But I don't have any confidence in them doing that, even though it would be a smart thing to do at this stage.
But guys, and Ken, you mentioned it, when you get an opportunity to get in the top 10 of a draft, okay, these are the drafts that, again, that build championships. You have to hit on these drafts. So this is a crucial draft for them to begin when you're in the top. You don't want to be in the top 10, but you're in the top 10 now. So you want to be able to make sure you're hitting on your draft. It'll be interesting to see, again, if they do utilize those picks to be able to get more picks. Because, again, as you mentioned earlier, you need an influx of young, inexpensive players to build this roster.
And look, the philosophy that goes back to, say, Jim Finks, that go big up front early in the draft when you have those picks, that wouldn't be a bad decision here. If you believe the guy you stay at 9 and you take that pick is going to be a special offensive lineman to round out that front, and that can be a strength of your team. You need to start building strengths of your team. Right. Philly certainly won in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And they had star talent around that, too. That's how far behind the Saints are here. So you're right, it comes down to you're picking 9th. No matter what you do, stay there, trade back. It's Mickey Loomis, so don't take trade up off the table, even though you might scratch your head. Get the guy that makes a difference long-term for your football team and give you another piece that could have star potential. If you miss there, things aren't going to go well. You're not going to make up for that with the rest of your draft.
I've got to invoke Ed Daniels' name again. Because on the radio station, for 3 straight months, 2 straight years, he kept saying, draft Jahmyr Gibbs, draft Jahmyr Gibbs, draft Jahmyr Gibbs, knowing full well that the Texas running back would end up earlier, and of course he's in Atlanta. And then last year, for 4 straight months, get Brock Bowers, get Brock Bowers, get Brock Bowers. You want that tight end in the first round? Look at this guy, playing in a bad team with a bad offense, with a bad quarterback, and he is what he is. He's superb. He's already top 5 in the league, if not top 3. So, Ed, you got it, buddy.
And that goes back to Tyler Warren and some of the rumors we've heard about the staff. I certainly understand why the staff and the organization would be in love with that guy, because he could be another Brock Bowers who brings a little Taysom Hill to the table, too, getting the ball to him in different ways. An impact player. I have no problem with it.
Yeah, see, and I want big, okay? I think you got to get better up front on offensive defensive line. And again, maybe it goes back to Jim Fink's philosophy, as you mentioned, but I think you got to get big. I think Philadelphia proved if you can win up front, you can win.
Well, they got Granderson, who's a solid player. They re-signed Chase Young, who's a solid player. They got Godshaw, who's a solid player. They got Brzee. They re-signed Jordan, giving him 1 more year here. So we haven't seen much of anything out of Foskey, another draft pick that was high at this point. But I think they're okay. And, of course, they also brought back, Saunders. So so as a result, you got, and Shepard. You got a lot of guys up there not as concerned about that. Do you have an impact guy of that bunch? I would say no. I'd say, you've got solid guys. But I think, as Jude said, that's kind of the case with the entire roster. You've got some solid players, which is why they can compete when healthy. But they don't have difference makers. They don't have a guy that absolutely positively, man, I've got to account for that guy. I mean, this guy is like ridiculous. The Bengals are spending money hand over foot on individual players, which is going to strap them with other positions. But Joe Burrow's elite. Jamar Chase is elite. And T. Higgins, if he was with the Saints, would be their number one receiver.
That's right.
So, and I'm not being negative toward Olave or Shaheed, but bigger, better overall. So, but they've done that. They have those guys. Name one guy that the Saints have that's like that. Alvin Kamara is the closest thing, and we're talking about a guy going into year 9.
I can't end this conversation with the Saints without talking about Derek Carr. Now, I'd like to toss it to you first, Ken. Again, it seems to be the fan base anti-Carr. We get it on our shows all the time. Obviously, again, at this point, there was an opportunity for them to maybe move on, but that was last year. Once they restructured that contract, everyone should have realized he was coming back. Again, the cap hit was going to be too much. Your thoughts on Carr? Can they win with Carr? And then what? You're the long, not to age here, but nobody's done sports in this town longer than you. You've seen it all. Why the hate of Derek Carr in New Orleans?
I don't know. You'd have to explain to me. And then, of course, during Super Bowl week, he wasn't here being an ambassador as others were, so he got crucified for that too. And I can't speak to that. I have no idea. Maybe he just wanted to spend time with his family. I can't answer that. But he's been criticized way too much in my estimation. He's not a great quarterback. He never will be. He's not a real good quarterback. At times, he can be real good, but most of the time, he's average to pretty good. And can you win with him? Absolutely. Oh, by the way, they have a winning record when he starts. And had he not gotten hurt against Green Bay a year ago, we'd be having a different conversation. We're up 17-0. In the fourth quarter, he's not playing, and Jameis Winston can't get him a point. And a rookie kicker can't make a field goal. So if they win that game, they've won the division, and they're beating the Eagles in the playoffs, which Tampa Bay did, and maybe we're thinking differently. Maybe it's the way he rubs fans. Maybe it's the Breeze effect. People here, some people were tied to Jameis Winston. With all due respect, you honestly believe he's the answer? I mean, he got benched for a nobody in Cleveland. He's not the answer. Come on, let's get serious here. So the answer to it is he should be their guy for another year. And after that, all bets are off. Even if they draft a quarterback this year, he gives you the best chance to win. And I don't think Kellen Moore was just saying that publicly. He said, absolutely, quoted if you like, that one of the reasons he took the job was he liked Derek Carr. So, and the fact that some other teams were interested and Carr was interested in finding out about other teams tells you that the guy's good enough to play somewhere. He's never going to be Drew Brees. He's never going to be what you want him to be, but he's solid enough to win with. That said, as I've said all along, he's a short-term guy. He's not going to be the guy 2 years from now, or certainly not 3 years from now.
Your thoughts on Carr?
Ken, with analysis, just answered your question because it is complex, and it comes down to, for the fan base, perception is reality. Yes, he has a winning record as a Saints quarterback, and the Saints have been their best with him on the roster the past couple of years when he's been healthy, but it's 14-13, and that's a high watermark for him in a career for a couple of years. I mean, his ceiling has been a 10-win wildcard team that lost in the first round, and that's over a decade plus of a career, so people aren't excited about that. Following in the footsteps of Drew Brees, need we say more? We know how difficult that's going to be until you have another truly successful winning playoff quarterback here. And I think that he brings a little bit of that upon himself with the way he presents himself. He's his own man. And there's maybe even a more genuine factor than a Drew Brees as far as him being himself. So when you see video, let's say you're just turning on the local news at night and the Saints are having a mini camp, OTAs, anything where they're just filming practice, what we call B-roll. You see him with the sleeves rolled up, showing off his guns. You don't see that normally from a quarterback. And that transfers into the fans' mind and they go, what's his deal? I mean, he's okay, but is he just showing off that he thinks he's so great? I think that rubs people the wrong way, and you have to back that up. And maybe he's not happy, I should say, with how fans have reacted to him here. Well, if you're going to be a winner, you're an NFL quarterback making over $30 million a year. You're amongst the elite in your sport at the most important position. How about you toughen up? How about you say, I'm taking this challenge on. I'm going to win over these fans. I'm going to win the NFC South. I'm going to prove myself here. If that's not his mindset, I'm not very excited about what his end result's going to be here as he continues as a Saints quarterback.
Hey, they're 2-0 last year. And he takes them on a touchdown drive to go ahead in the fourth quarter against the world champions. And the Saints defense failed again.
Yeah.
The following week, he takes them on a touchdown drive in the fourth quarter at Atlanta to take the lead. And the defense failed again. And all the injuries had begun setting in. So, again, it's not an excuse. But if you look at it and truly examine it, you would see that he was playing at a high level and that his team was playing at a high level. McCoy gets hurt, then everybody starts getting hurt. And they blow those games because their defense couldn't get the job done. I didn't hear anybody ripping their defense for what transpired, or the so-called really good players or named players on that side of the ball. But 2 consecutive weeks, they should have been 4-0.
Right.
They couldn't get off the field. Against Philadelphia, they got guys running into each other, knocking each other down. allowing a tight end to run all the way down the field. Come on.
Go back to previous year. Remember the drop Foster Morrow pass in the end zone? He led him down the field in a high-scoring game against Jacksonville. You can remember these moments and say, hey, this guy's plenty good enough for you to win with and win the division. But fans, I think their expectations are skewed at this point, and I think more of the fan base wanted to tear down.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe the Saints not reading the room. They're worried about selling tickets and keeping interest.
Exactly. No, and I think most people did want the teardown, no doubt. Let's shift gears. I want to go to college basketball. I want to talk about the women first, again, because again, when you look at on the men's side, only McNeese made it to the big dance. They're the 12th seed. They're taking on Clemson on Thursday. By the time this show airs, again, that will be over. Most people think that Will Wade's going to take the North Carolina State job. He'll be gone from McNeese, but he's done a great job there. But I want to talk about the women first. First of all, LSU, the 3 seed, the Spokane Regional, taking on San Diego State. It's going to be at the PMAC the first 2 rounds with Florida State and George Mason there. Ken, your thoughts on what Kim Mulkey's done?
I think she's done a very good job with what she has. The only thing that's a negative is that she just hasn't developed any depth. And they've signed some players that you thought would step up and be able to play better than they've played, and they simply haven't. Del Rosario, Lastier Poa, they've signed a young lady out of Lafayette Christian I thought would be terrific. And she doesn't play much at all. And I saw her play 2 straight years in the Sugar Bowl tournament. She was tremendous. So they haven't developed depth. Their 3 players core is as good as any in the country, if not the best. The problem is 2 of them are nursing injuries right now. So Florida State's in that regional, and they can really score. So they're going to have a tough time getting out of that regional. I hope they do. And we don't know about the relative health, but we'll see. I know in the selection show, Flaugier was in a walking boot, and Anissa Morrow got banged up as well. So look, if you're missing one of those, you're in trouble. But I think she's done an excellent job. Look, she's raised the level of that program beyond a shadow of a doubt, created fan interest, won a national championship, and that's always going to be the measuring stick, as Jay Johnson is finding out already, and as Brian Kelly has found out already. Overall, just a terrific job. A heck of a hire, worth it.
Yeah, but we've already got people sort of complaining about, well, how come they're not the elite of the elite when they're a top 10 team again? Like, what she's able to do as a Hall of Fame coach, and her floor is so ridiculously high that it spoils you quickly, and we're seeing that with this LSU program. Look, the other that we didn't mention, Michaela Williams out of Northwest Louisiana, she's sort of the X factor. When she's hot, they can beat anybody. She's going to have a huge NCAA tournament for them to really make a run. As of right now, when you mention the injuries, lack of depth, I worry about them being able to get any further than, say, the Sweet 16 and playing against Notre Dame, the 2 seed in that regional. I think that might be a more complete team than what LSU is right now on paper. But again, fans should just enjoy the fact that this is a blast of a product and a growing sport that's been promoted heavily. The ratings are up, and you've got LSU as a power in women's basketball. Look, just enjoy the ride and be grateful for what they're able to do here in the postseason when they're not in the best shape to make a run.
Let's give kudos and give credit to Bo Browder at Xavier. He's done a phenomenal job for over 2 decades now. He's got Xavier in the Sweet 16 for the first time ever. He's never gotten past the 2nd round. He did this year. You can read about it at CrescentCitySports.com. And he's such a nice guy. And he's such a good coach. And to have that program winning 20-plus games every year, and they're 29-3.
29-3, right?
They're playing an undefeated team,
Southern Oregon,
and the coach of the undefeated team, Southern Oregon, is a girl he babysat.
Really?
When she was young.
Come on.
Yeah. Her assistant coach is her dad, who gave Bo his first job.
Okay.
So it's pretty interesting. Kloppenberg. So pretty interesting story. You can read about it, as I mentioned, at CrescentCitySports.com. But she's done a great job. So there's that. And as for McNeese, look, Jude sees them all the time in the South. But, they're a good basketball team, and they get good players, and they coach them, and they've dominated that league, and they'll be one and done.
Yeah, things are about to change there for McNeese, and that's a shame because they've been lifted up here by what Will Wade's done. But the problem with this matchup, people trying to find, this is a great 12 to pick against a 5 in Clemson. Clemson can attack their Achilles heel. They don't have real size in the front court, and Clemson's built around their front court. They've got a 6'11 and 6'8 guy who are brilliant post-up scorers. McNeese never sees that. I don't know how they're going to match up against the Tigers if they don't turn them over a lot. I bet they don't. it's a really tough matchup for what's probably Wade's last game there.
I did want to mention Southern is a 16th seed in a play-in game on the women's side, taking on University of California, San Diego at Pauley Pavilion. Also in the NAIA, 14th seed Xavier men were eliminated in the first round. Also Dillard was 15th with a 15th seed. They won the GCAC, but again lost in the first round as well. Loyola women also lost in the first round, NAIA. Tulane. Men finished 19-14, 12-6. They accepted an invitation to the college basketball crown tourney in Vegas, a 16-team tourney that's on USC on April the 1st.
I'd love to know the story about how they lucked into the better of the two secondary tournaments, the two that they would be interested in. They would never play in the CBI, teams from the American wouldn't. So to be able to play in this inaugural tournament against all these big name schools with NIL money available, I don't know how that's all going to work out in Vegas, but it's a nice little piece of exposure for the program. And Ron Hunter should have, I think, has saved his job, or they're not playing in that thing. He was under heavy pressure. He should not have lost at home to a Southeastern, to a UNO, certainly with how tough the privateer season was. That's how bad things were looking early, but he brought a young team together. He's got some really nice pieces there, and I think Greenway fans should be excited that maybe this is a good sign. They're playing in this thing, that he can keep some of that young talent with eligibility left, because they've got a good NIL setup over there. If he can keep this team together, they can only move up in the AAC, but the next 2 months are going to be fascinating there, because they're such talented young players that there's a market for a lot of them, the ones with a year or two left. So I'm fascinated to see if he can keep those guys. You've got to make the decision to back him before you know the answer to that question.
Agreed. But that's kind of what's happening in LSU as well. LSU, again, 14-18, 3-15 in the SEC. They declined to bid to the NIT, and what I'm hearing is, again, it's because of possible defections from the team. Now, again, LSU was given about $2 million in NIL money this past year. It's supposed to go up somewhere between 7 and 9 with more NIL money, again, for McMahon going forward. But Ken, what are your thoughts about what McMahon has done? What are your thoughts about, again, the state of college basketball, really college athletics, where you can't go to a tournament because you're worried about kids while walking away and defecting to another school?
Well, again, that's the world we live in now, so get used to it, unfortunately. From the standpoint of McMahon, in defense of him, he walked into a very difficult circumstance and situation. And no disrespect to WLAE, but it was a shambles because of what transpired when he got there. So there's that. Number two, he had the misfortune of ending up in maybe the best conference we've ever seen. And that's not an overstatement.
No.
14 teams are in the NCAA tournament. I mean, out of 68, that's over 20% of the teams in the NCAA tournament are from the SEC. So his timing was very bad. Thirdly, he lost his best player early in the season, which didn't help. So there's the defense mechanism. Now to go on the offense, it's unacceptable. You can't have a losing record. You have to at least have a winning record, whether it's 17-15 or whatever the case may be. So, and they were non-competitive in quite a few games down the stretch, which I think is a significant concern, a sign that either they're not listening to you, or they're looking to get out, or they don't care. And yes, they were facing good opponents, but they should have been more competitive. So I think he's got one more year. They're going to infuse it with money, give him a chance to get more players. We'll see how that works. And then, of course, down the road, let's see what happens with the facility. Because that is a big part of the equation moving forward. Very quickly, my wife and I were in Austin a few months ago. Our son lives there. We went to a concert at Moody Coliseum. University of Texas played in the Superdome for years. We tore it down. They're playing at Moody, which is an NBA beautiful arena. That's exactly what LSU is trying to accomplish right now.
I think Moki will get her.
I think she will.
I think she'll get our new state. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I got to turn to you on this one. University of New Orleans 4-27, 2-18 in the conference. Master P now president of basketball operations, and I'd like both of you guys to chime in on this as well. Talk about the basketball program, but talk about the athletic program and the future of the athletic program at UNO with NIL, with the unlimited transfers, and what, again, especially what Master P can maybe do for this basketball program as well.
It's a fascinating study to see what can happen with a low major program that's low on cash and where it can go from here. As far as the basketball season goes, you've seen the headlines talk about issues where commitment is lost to the program in this NIL era where guys are only committed to the program as long as they're there and they're always looking for the next opportunity and more money. I think Stacey Hollowell and his staff fell victim to that in a major way after having to throw a roster together when they took over at the start of May last offseason, which was brutal. If things would have worked out perfectly, they would have been competitive in the Southland and it would have been fine. It certainly didn't happen that way. And part of what they need to do moving forward is the money component. That's why Stacey went out and made the connection with a Master P and has been recruiting other big names with big pocketbooks, let's be honest, to try to support the program, because that is the wave of the future. If this works, you're going to see a lot of copycats around college basketball and college athletics in general. If you can find those type of people who can bring in that sort of visibility and money that you need to be able to compete even at the lowest levels of that 364 team Division I setup. I'm excited to see how that's going to work out, and I think that's a work in progress. There's areas where Master P has made clear that he thinks are important to improve the day-to-day, the living conditions for student athletes. He wants that to be a plus at UNO, so that's going to require investment in some building. And then you got to come up with the money to pay a certain caliber of player. There were teams in the Southland Conference that I know this year, the Southland Conference, and there's a reason why it moved up in the ratings, that had, you know, $500,000 rosters. That's remarkable just a few years from what this league was looked at as just throwing basketball teams together. They're more concerned with FCS football and even baseball. Times are changing there, and schools are either going to keep up or they're not. That's why Tulane Athletics is taking a huge step forward. Their NIL program is impressive.
Yes, it is.
And that's where UNO, if they're going to survive, they're going to have that. And being able to make this connection should help some, but they're going to need more community support, just like the university itself. Far bigger issue is going to need more community and state level support, and that's all going to be developing in the next 6 months and beyond.
Yeah. And of course, Jude is the voice of UNO basketball, so he would know. Ken, your thoughts on UNO?
Well, I did my first game there in 1982 and worked there through 2006 over different tenures and as a senior administrator, and we had over 17,000 students, had successful athletic programs, had good facilities. Zephyrs helped them with baseball, and in basketball they built an arena in 82, which was still good and viable. It's still solid, but it's not what it was, obviously. And baseball is a little better, and I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I started the whole initiative to name the place after Ron Maestri, and we raised a lot of money to accomplish that. And it's one of the things I don't use the word pride, but one of the things I'm most happy with what I've done in my career, because he deserved it when he was kind of an outcast over there at the time, and I kind of changed that, and I had to fight City Hall, frankly, on a few of those issues. But to see what's happened, it's depressing, it's disappointing, it's frustrating. It's a result of continuous bad leadership over an extended period of time. It's true. At the top of the university. And I can say it unequivocally now, also in athletics. Man, I mean, since Ron Maestri, you know, they haven't gotten it right. I wish Vince Granito the best. He's a really good guy, and he has a lot of experience in intercollegiate athletics. But ultimately at the UNO, it's got to be about the coaches. They have to be dynamic. They have to be the salespeople for their programs. They have to raise the money themselves. They have to have people around them that are capable of doing the same. It's all back to money. So it's hard to find that. And if you do find that and they're any good, they probably go elsewhere. So that's the trick that you have. And then your student clientele, I mean, it's frankly, it's depressing, but it's embarrassing to be in the 6,000 range at that university. It just doesn't make any sense for a school that was so good.
And let me say this. What I can say in a position where I'm doing what he used to do in some ways, he was full-time there and dealing with fundraising and sponsorships and things like that. So I know he understands deeply the dysfunction that he had to deal with at times there. I'm impressed so far with Kathy Johnson and what she's doing as the president of the university, and her vision and her willingness to make the tough decisions. But I speak to every UNO alum out there. You've got to hold, for a public institution, the state level responsible. Whether this school winds up moving to the LSU system again or not, doesn't matter what system. The fact is, these leaders were put into place by decision makers at the state level, by state boards, UL or LSU. That's the reason they're in this mess. You can't just say UNO can't work because it failed. It is not an institution unto itself. It is a public institution within the state system, and it's up to the state to step up here and see, hey, maybe we have the right leader now, and to give a helping hand, because they are culpable.
Kathy Johnson's impressive, and she's doing the tough stuff, which is going to make her unpopular, because somebody has to, at some point, say, I'm ripping the Band-Aid off, and we've got to do these things. And they're doing it, and it's hard with the money that you're talking about subtracting. So there's that. And the fact of the matter is that their failure in athletics, in particular, stems from a horrendous decision made in about a decade and a half ago, and letting the public know that we're going to go Division III, which was horrendous. And they're still trying to dig out of that. It was a joke, and it was ignorant. And I understand the motivation for it at the time, but it was dead wrong. And they've made it impossible for coaches. You know, I'm not saying Tom Walter might still be there, but he would have stayed longer. Yeah. He loved it here, okay? But he's gone, and that was a large reason for it. And they've gone through basketball coach after basketball coach after basketball coach. They got a good one now, but can he sustain his own program and keep himself going in the process? Because Stacy's really good. So there's some assets. Dax Norris is a good guy. Want him to succeed, and we'll see. Look, they got some others in other sports. My buddy Burgess Kang has done a great job for a long time.
Tennis?
And I work with him closely. So anyway, look, there's a long way to go there. And it carries the name of the city. And nobody wants to see the university succeed more than I do. And our son is a graduate school student there, graduated from there as a grad student. Aced it, by the way. But
UNO cannot fail. I mean, that's the bottom line. Okay, again, it's the flagship university for the city. It cannot fail again, and that has to happen on the state level, as both of you guys mentioned. We've only got about 3 minutes left. Just a quick comment from both of you on the Pelicans. Will we see a change on the bench?
That's a great question. Don't know the answer to it. Everybody likes Willie Green, but at this point you have to question whether he's the guy or not. I mean, they're not just getting beat, they're getting destroyed in certain games, and they're non-competitive. And they don't defend, and they're not tough. And he did call him out a couple of games back. I give him credit for that, and you kind of sat back and said, phew, it's about time. So he did. And I think, look, there's the opposite side of that, which is you do it too often, you lose your players. I think Van Gundy was like that. But I'm glad he did. He's very likable. Would like to see him succeed. The answer to the question is I don't know. You know, their roster is such that they've got guys that can do certain things well individually, but even healthy, do they really defend well enough? Are they really tough enough? I mean, you talk about Herb Jones, Devontae Murray, and now Trey Murphy, all being hurt. I think with them, they're solid, but nothing special.
How do we know? Because they're injured so much. So you have to throw that into the
But we knew from last year. We saw last year where they could be. They won 49 games. So they were a good team, but not a threat.
But would they have built upon that? We just will never know that because they never stayed healthy enough. I don't know if Willie Green's the right coach. I just know that at this point, I don't see leadership amongst the players and commitment to the cause and belief that the New Orleans Pelicans can win. It's time to start thinking about blowing it up. The question is, do you want David Griffin doing that, or do you want to start over there too? I mean, that's what you have to come to. I think they need to think about, well, if he finishes the season healthy and impressive, moving on from Zion Williamson, they're going to have a high pick, hopefully top 5. Maybe you get Cooper Flagg at number 1 if the lotto balls go your way. I think it's time to start over again, as painful as that is, because the product is so painful, and the lack of belief and consistency amongst the players tells you there's a culture problem.
30 seconds. Do they trade Zion?
I don't think so. Not if this group's in place. If David Griffin and Willie Green are here, no. He's their best player. He's an elite talent, but he's missed more games than he's played in. That's it. End of story. That's the problem. And as Jude mentioned, leadership. You know, that's not a guy that the rest of the guys look to as a leader on the team. He's just a hell of a player.
Well, again, I've always said, and I've been saying this on the radio show as well, sell high, right? He's at his apex right now as a pro. I don't know if he's. What I do know is he's going to get injured again. So again, sell high. If you're going to sell now.
In the NBA, you can't overrate talent. You can't overrate like star level talent. But if you don't have the culture, you're not going to win. And when bumpy times come, you're going to crumble. That's what's happened here.
No doubt about it. Ken, one more time, scholarship. How can folks get involved?
Go to rumbleraiders.com and then go to giving and scholarship, and you'll find the information, or go to crescentcitysports.com, and we'll push it out on social media as well in the name of Ed Daniels at Archbishop Rummel.
One more time, 2 to 4 each and every weekday. 106.7 the ticket, 6 to 7 weeks, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And of course, the 3 tailgaters, 10 to noon on Saturday.
A delicious Eric Asher sandwich.
There you go. Love that.
We kick him off during the football season, but he's part of that too with the original.
There you go. Sounds good. Guys, thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
And again, excited about what's going on at 106.7 The Ticket. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's so many ways to catch our program now. WLAE-TV, WLAE-TV 2, Pelican Sports Television. Set your DVR, you'll never miss the program. There's a QR code on your screen right now that will take you to my website, ericasher.com, and also the WLAE-TV YouTube channel, where again you can catch all of our our programs, current and past as well. As we mentioned, 106.7 The Ticket is where you can get 24-hour sports. Ken Trahan, Jude Young, myself. I'm on 4 to 6, Ken 2 to 4, and of course Jude 6 to 7. Hope you'll be tuning in, checking us out with New Orleans' only 24-hour sports station. iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app. We got our own app, 106.7 app. Of course, so many ways to catch the show and the station as well. Want to thank the underwriters who make the show possible. Please continue to support our great underwriters. They're the reason why our show continues on WLAE, and of course the folks here at WLAE who produce our program each and every week do a great job. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson. Got to give a shout out to our director William Hill, who is not with us today, but Alex Chacon and Kenny Juno is back, so we got the old crew back again. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to Ken. Thanks to Jude. I'm Eric Asher. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.
I am a faith-filled servant leader.
I am curious and one of a kind.
I am innovative.
I am the connection between my school and my community.
I am fearless in the face of adversity. I am a PJP Jaguar.